Hey everybody, Joe here from Avalon Accounting, and today we're talking about tax deadlines in Canada for 2021. So I know last year was a really weird year with the pandemic, and this year is a little more stable, but these are the facts as of April 2nd, 2021. I'm going to tell you what the personal tax deadlines are, what the corporate tax deadlines are, and GST and HST tax deadlines. We'll also cover when payments are due and what to do if you can't pay your tax bill owing. So all that and nothing else coming right up. All right, so let's start with personal tax deadlines. So we'll start with the simplest version, which is a non-self-employed person. You get T4 income or something like that. Your taxes are going to be due on April 30th, which is later this month, April 30th, 2021. No special cases for 2021, no COVID pandemic related extensions or anything like that. Right now, as of today, April 30th is your date for both your tax filing and your payments due. So one common question that we get is what should I do if I can't pay right now? Well, you should really make sure that you still file your return on time. You do not want to have late filing penalties. So file your return on time and you can pay maybe later. That's fine. You'll be charged interest on the amount that you owe, but you won't be suffering penalties. So that's a really important thing to consider. All right, next up, we're going to talk about self-employed people, self-employed individuals. You might know yourself as a sole proprietor or a business owner or whatever you kind of identify with, but you don't have a corporation. So you're self-employed and not incorporated. So for self-employed people, your T1 or personal tax return is due on June 15th, 2021. So that's a bit of an extension against people that aren't self-employed, except that you must know that your taxes are still due on April 30th. So what we see for the most part is that people end up doing their taxes for April 30th, just like not self-employed people, because you need to know what you owe before you can pay it, and you might as well just file your return at that time. But if there's a scenario where you just can't get around to get your bookkeeping together and you need to push to June 15th, that's totally fine. Just make an estimated tax amount owing payment on April 30th and you won't have any penalties or any interest to pay on the amount that you owe. So all good there. Now, if you're self-employed and you charge GST or HST, your returns are going to be due on the same timeline as that. So payments are still going to be due on April 30th, but you can delay until June 15th to file your GST or HST if you're an annual filer. So they just fall in line with your personal tax deadlines, but you definitely want to make sure you get your GST and HST filed on time as well and make a payment before April 30th if you're able. For tax installments, you may have to, if you owe more than $3,000 in a year for GST, you may have to pay tax installments, and that goes for your personal taxes as well. So when you file your return, you'll get a schedule of tax installments payable. So just follow that, make sure you make those payments, or you will have interest to pay come next year. All right, so next up, let's cover corporate tax deadlines for 2021. So for most corporations, if you're December 31 year end, your tax returns are going to be due on June 30th of the following year. So if you have a December 31st, 2021 year end, your tax return itself is going to be due on June 30, 2021. So that goes for other year ends as well. So if you're a March 31 year end, your tax returns are going to be due April, May, June, July, August, September 30th, the last day of the sixth month following your year end date. That's a mouthful. So much like with self-employed individuals, your taxes are actually due at a different time than your tax return is due as a corporation. So, after 6 months, your tax return is due, but your taxes are actually owing earlier than that. So the general rule is that your taxes are due 2 months after your year end. But there's an exception that applies to most small businesses in Canada that pushes that tax due date to 3 months following your year end. So that exception would be, number one, you're a Canadian controlled private corporation, which I'll link in the description below, a definition of that. That you've qualified for the small business deduction, and that just comes with being a small business corporation. And also that you had less than $500,000 in profit during that year, or taxable income, across all of your associated corporations. So most small businesses meet these criteria. So for the most part, small business taxes are due 3 months after your year end. So using our example from before, if you have a December 30, 2020 year end, your taxes were due on March 31st, 2021. Now, if you've missed that payment, don't fret. You will have to pay some interest on the amount that was due at that time, but the interest rates are quite low, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. We're more worried about late filing penalties and that if you owe money, not so much on the taxes owing, because interest rates, like I said, are so low. It's not punitive to pay a little bit late. All right, for a corporation's GST and HST due dates, those vary by the frequency that you file. So if you're a monthly filer for GST, your returns and payment are due on the last day of the following month of the reporting period. So I'm going to keep that in mind. Quarterly is the same. So if you have a quarter that's January through March 31st, your GST return and the payment is due on April 30th, the last day of the following month of that 3-month reporting period, and that just keeps rolling over for each quarter for quarterly filers. For annual filers, it's 3 months after your year-end date, so March 31 is when the payment and return is due. So again, I'm going to stress this again, is that if you don't have the money to pay your GST or HST, still file on time. You do not want to get into late filing penalties. Interest is a different matter. If you owe some money, that's okay, but you definitely want to file on time to make sure you avoid those penalties. All right, so hopefully that's given you some clarity on when taxes are due in 2021. Things can change, so you can always check the CRA website to see any different tax deadlines, or if they're updating things there. And also, if you can just hit us a like on this, if you got some value out of this video, hit us a like. That would be really helpful for us. And if you have any questions about your tax deadline, or when you need to make payments, or what to do if you can't file on time, any of those questions, just post in the comments below and we will get to as many of those questions as we possibly can. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next video. Take care.